I love you, you skinny Hebrew.
Hello, my name is Kaylee, and today I'm with my guest Kayla, and we're talking about the Martin and Lewis reunions. So, for those of you who don't know, Martin and Lewis were a team from 1946 to 1956, and they were one of the greatest comedy teams of all time. And they were at the top of their fame, and they quickly went out at the top of their fame with much drama. Much drama. So, hi, Kayla.
Hello.
I would say that we're like two of the biggest Martin and Lewis, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis is their full names. Sorry. I was just calling them Martin and Lewis. We're two of the biggest people on social media that have gone and researched a lot, so in depth for years, for the last, at least for the last 8 years for me, through newspaper clippings, videos that we've found, and even audio recordings.
Books.
At least, books, like constant research, because we just love them so much, and their breakup was so sudden, and
Dramatic.
apparently lots of people were devastated.
Traumatized.
Apparently, I found a video the other day where like the guy was a kid and his mother was like obsessed with them, and their breakup like shattered their lives and caused her to go into a deep depression.
Apparently, she was bipolar and she just went off the nutty end.
Like what, I don't know. Apparently, it meant so much to so many people, and I know if we lived back then, it would have affected us. Hopefully, not to death. Like that story, that was really a tragic story.
Well, I mean, my parents were also fans of them. Them growing up, they were fans of them. They were fans when it was happening, when they were really a thing. You know, my mom loved Jerry especially, and my dad was Dean, so that's also a big influence on my side of things.
And for those of you who don't know, like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis became big stars after they separated. So it was pretty much for the best that they did go to achieve like superstar status on their own. Because before, I mean, they had to prove something for themselves. Because before they weren't famous, they hadn't made it in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Dean was trying for I don't remember how many years. I'm bad with years and dates. I'm just gonna put that out there right now. I know the details, bad with the dates.
Okay.
And so for years he was trying to be a singer, but he also wasn't someone that was overly ambitious. He, he wasn't like Frank Sinatra, like he's like, must do this, gotta do that. Dean was like, I'm just gonna sing, it's gonna sound fun, I'm gonna be kind of cool in a nightclub at night. Hey, this is something I can do because I'm naturally good at it, but I'm not gonna take time to learn music. I'm not gonna take time to do that. I'm just gonna do it. So, and he gathered a small group of people that really liked him and stuff, but he wasn't anything like, wow, Dean Martin. It was like, he was just Dean. I mean, at some point he was still going by Dino Crocetti. So, I mean, he grew up in the old-fashioned Italian style household. He had problems with himself. He was actually bullied, which is so funny to think about in a very non-funny way, but he had that happening to him, which is something that he and Jerry, of course, shared with that, even though they may not have discussed it, but they definitely had that shared background. And he, you know, he, he he did stuff. He worked for questionable people, and as and stuff like that. And he kind of tried to mosey, honestly, his way into stardom. But it wasn't really until he met Jerry and things took off with Martin and Lewis that he really got any sort of acclaim. I mean, I could go into way more details than that, but we'll be here for a long time.
Yes, we'll do a whole other segment on them. We're just trying to give people a quick background on who are these people? Why should I care? So with Jerry, he grew up in a show business background with both his parents, but he was shuffled around from family member to family member because his parents kind of seemed like they weren't ready or didn't want a child. I personally, that's what I think. They didn't want a child because they didn't have another one afterwards, and they kind of just didn't care. So from there, Jerry admired his father tremendously, but even though his father didn't really show him that much of affection. Dean Martin, when Jerry first met Dean Martin, he kind of took on that father figure. He kind of reminded him in some way of his father, and then the brother that he had always wanted. Jerry struggled as he was kind of like an MC at certain points, but he got so scared talking to people, which is what I understand. I totally understand that, because speaking publicly and off the cuff kind of freaks me out a little bit. I got really nervous, but so I totally understand him in those days. So to not speak in public, he did a pantomime routine. That was one of his main points, where he would lip sync to songs and do crazy funny things and make crazy faces, do crazy things with his body, which when Dean Martin would remember him, would talk about him, he's like, that boy should be doing crazy funny things with his body or something.
Yeah.
So when Dean first met Jerry was in a nightclub. It's questionable on where and when they met, but all we do know for sure is that Dean liked what he saw and really thought that Jerry was funny.
Yeah.
So they were both kind of just bumbling along. Jerry had just married Patty and he had already had his child, his first child born already. And then
that's
Dean
when they
already
first got together. They kind of knew each other. There's proof that they knew each other before then.
Yes. So that's another myth we got to dispel right now. They did know each other prior to 1946.
Yes.
There wasn't there something where Jerry used to babysit for Dean's kids?
Yes, there was. It's actually they were supposedly, the real year should have been 1942.
Yeah, approximately 1942, 1943-ish, maybe. And there is a clipping where they actually performed at the Havana, Madrid, I believe it was, in early 1946. So that was one of the first listings in a newspaper of them actually performing together.
Yeah, well, they had known each other for quite some time, and then they would see each other at different shows for quite some time. I mean, that went on, and then like that's when Jerry would leave the
That little notes.
the notes to him on the walls, sometimes in lipstick,
Yes.
to Dean and stuff.
And as we go forward with these reunions, you'll see an interview. Well, not an interview. It's an abbreviated quotation of an interview from one of the members of the Gold Diggers, who used to be on Dean Martin's show. They were called a girl group called the Gold Diggers. They said that Jerry and Dean would leave little notes to each other, and they were still doing that way after their breakup.
It's like a callback. They'd had like a callback to that.
Yeah.
To that time when they weren't like working together yet. It's just kind of sweet.
So they there's lots of pictures of them prior, or quite a few anyway, of them prior to 1946, and before they teamed up, of them sitting at dinner tables, eating with a large group of people, hanging out. I think we'll do another special on the start of their relationship in another special. Jerry did call Dean once he there was an opening at the 500 Club. Now there is, how do I put this? There's different stories on how they teamed up, but I would say that definitely the part where Jerry called Dean is true. There was an article in the 50s where Dean even said that, hey, I was called up by Jerry and I helped him.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way it would have been Dean to instigate. It would always been Jerry. There's no way.
Yeah, some people want to claim that Dean just happened to be staying there, and that's not true. But there was a singer who did get fired or sick. There's stories that differ on that.
Yeah.
And there was room for Dean. Now, whether Jerry was struggling or not, he probably could have been struggling, and then the boss wasn't happy with him. Good old Skinny D'Amato. Not a pleasant fellow.
Mm-hmm.
He was the owner of the 500 Club, where Dean and Jerry became a huge success. And their first show wasn't successful because they were separate. And so after the show, Skinny D'Amato said, "You two need to figure it out or something will happen," basically. So he was hung out with mobsters, I would say, or was somewhat of a mobster himself.
Yeah.
So, when Skinny D'Amato said, "You better do something about this," you better
do it.
Yeah. So whether or not, there's different stories on how many people were in that next show and saw the famous moment where Dean and Jerry officially became a team and like the magic suddenly happened. So I've heard anywhere from 4 people to like 100. I don't even know. I'm not sure they knew how many people were there. Maybe they were just so caught up in the moment that they just didn't, care.
I think there was more than 4.
I think there's probably more than 4 too. So Jerry put together, right before that show, Jerry put together sketches that he had been thinking about in his head for some time and had never been able to put to use. And he wrote these on a greasy pastrami bag. And that's how Dean and he decided what they were gonna do, and then they just took it from there, and they went crazy.
Yeah.
And then they had that same formula of madness and mayhem throughout the next 10 years. They did kind of refine it, I would say. Definitely in their later years, where they had like, they still did spontaneous improvisation, but they did have set routines. But like thousands and thousands of people, it was like Frank Sinatra in the early 40s, where teenagers and other people would go wild.
Fangirls and fanboys. I always say it started with Frank Sinatra, and it continued with Frank Sinatra, and then it went Frank Sinatra, Martin Lewis, Elvis Presley, the Beatles. They were right in there with them for the fanboy timeline.
So like, they were the only, I would say they were the only comedians that achieved that like sort of status. They were rock star status or pop singer status. Frank Sinatra obviously wasn't a rock star, but yes, like they weren't going crazy. People weren't going crazy over Abbott and Costello or Laurel and Hardy or Bob Hope and Bing Crosby or any other like anybody else after Rowan and Martin. Nobody's going and like woo, like screaming and like
they had a lot of fans, but they weren't fangirls. There's a difference.
And I think, like, I would say, like, they didn't have teenage girls.
Bobby Soxers.
They didn't have Bobby Soxers. Would we consider them Bobby Soxers?
Yeah. Yeah, in the early, they started in the 40s.
Yeah, I guess so. Then, like,
they were.
Well, like, so, like, by the time, about 5 years, so it took them about 5 years into their partnership that they finally got like 20,000 people in the streets.
Yeah, I also think it's a big thing to say that Elvis Presley was a huge Martin and Lewis fan, and Dean was a huge influence on him. But his I keep wanting to say ability, but not really ability, but his charisma to go out on stage and perform the way he performed, which at the time was so mega, like, no, you don't do that. You don't shake your hips like that. Like
don't thrust your pelvis at us.
he got it from them. Like, not that they went out and they weren't thrusting their pelvises, but
Jerry was a little bit.
yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
He kind of took. He's like, you know what? If they can go out and they can do that, I can go out and do that. And like they did influence other people in that way, and musicians in that way. So,
and like, let's not forget that also Elvis was considered by Hal Wallace after their breakup to team up with Jerry again, but Elvis like respected Martin and Lewis so much, he's like, I can't replace Dean. Nobody can replace Dean. And then Jerry was like, I had the best partner in the world and best straight man, and I'm not gonna,
not gonna step on that.
I had the best. I'm not gonna go any lower than that. Well, let's get into their breakup and actually go into the reunions, which there's let's say there's a 20-year myth.
Yes.
A myth of the 20 years of which they did not speak to each other, which is very untrue. But the reason why the public thinks this is because Dean and Jerry decided to perpetuate this myth themselves. I know they didn't want you to know that they were talking to each other during these 20 years, or had seen each other, or had
yes, they wanted to be mysterious.
So their breakup was super dramatic. They wanted to go in different directions. I think we'll go into why they broke up another show. Because that's a whole thing.
Yes, that's a whole thing. But I think we should say that it was more than just them wanting to do different careers.
Yes.
It was personal. There was definite personal stuff involved.
There was so many things. But they I would say, but what I just said was probably the positive outcome of why they needed
Yes.
to. Why they
Yes.
needed to.
It was positive, but there was definitely a time in their life and career for a little while there where things were rocky. and they missed each other, and they had to flounder a little bit before they got themselves up and going full.
Mhm.
Yeah. But it's also important to state that, they were very close and they loved each other, and like that kind of, they had, they had such a great connection. It's important to say that and to specify that before we say like they broke up and like,
Mhm.
they broke up and then they went off on these, so-called 20 years of not seeing each other when they really did. And like
Mhm.
that they, how significant them seeing each other was, I guess is what I'm kind of pointing out.
Yes. There were outside, so in 1954, 2 years before they broke up, Dean was trying to like tell people, yes, we're having troubles, but if people will just leave us alone, we
Leave
would
us
get through
alone.
them.
Yeah.
And he's like, I know there's the famous saying that like Jerry said that Dean told him that you're nothing but a dollar sign to me, effing
Yeah.
dollar sign to me. But Dean had said publicly and in the newspaper interviews that, this kid means more to me than money.
Yeah.
I love him like a brother or a family member or whatever, a friend, all these things.
Yeah.
And, it's more to me than money. Otherwise,
Yeah. I think that if Dean had actually said those words, it was probably in one of those moments in life where you say something that you totally don't mean and you don't regret, and you're just so angry at the person, it comes out, and then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that like immediately after. Like, I'm just saying, if it was said, I think it was in that context.
the dollar sign thing, yes.
Yeah.
Because his actions of if he had really meant that at all, like he wouldn't have pursued Jerry and try to be friends with him again after the breakup. So they broke up on July 25th, 1956, 10 years exactly to the day that they got together. They had not been speaking supposedly for the 10 months, but then again, that's another myth.
Yeah.
They definitely were speaking. Now, whether or not that was like, obviously they had issues and were struggling. But, Dean went to Jerry's birthday party that year. And then their shows at the Sands Hotel in March 1956 showed them getting along on stage and, hugging each other really tightly, slapping each other's bottom, like a whole bunch of fun stuff. So like they were still trying to work their differences out, even though they weren't
just like, I'm going to stand in the corner and be silent and only talk to you if I absolutely have to. They weren't doing that.
Like even on the set of Hollywood or Bust, sorry, in 1956, which was their final movie, they were seen playing, I think it was chess or something.
Yeah.
Or poker, card. Oh no, I think it was just cards. But they were seen playing cards, and they were doing some other stuff, and so there is a slight myth.
Yes.
About the 10 months before.
They're just covered in myth and mythology. They are mythological. They are. That's what there we go. They're right up there with like the, Greek philosophy. There we go. Martin Lewis, Greek philosophy. That's how it goes in this house. Okay, that's how it goes.
Okay, so we're gonna go to the first clipping. So after they broke up, which we'll go into the breakup a little bit more on another special. But so August 1956. Okay, so we have this from 1956 in August, 1 month after they broke up. department of utter confusion, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis breaking contracts like mad to be free of one another, now suing NBC for millions of alleged breach of contract for calling their series off as a team, basically. So that, I wonder what was going on there. I don't know. That's a little strange.
It's like, we broke up, but why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, especially after they went as a team to say, we're breaking off our movie contracts, we're breaking off our NBC shows, and it was like another 18 months before they actually just like had that figured out. It was definitely into 1957 where they finally figured it out, where we're going to do separate shows from each other. So obviously I would say that they had to have been talking to each other to both combine and like say, hey, we don't want our shows taken down or called off, if that's true. So
there would have been some form of communication going on.
Yeah, and this isn't just tabloid stuff. This is legitimate news sources and news articles. So this one, I'm pretty sure happened, but it's very confusing. So our next one. So the next one that we had to talk about, I actually there was a link online, and those Google links disappeared. But basically, in 1957, they had come together to discuss their TV contracts, and they reunited there in person at NBC to discuss them. Now they did. After that, they started their solo TV shows. So, or TV specials. They weren't ongoing series. They were just specials. So we'll go to this next thing from 1957. Okay.
Okay. Oh, so this is from a newspaper clipping. I'm correct, right? Yeah. So, I'm sorry. Okay, so behind the screen, a year ago, pals of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis kept them apart to avoid bloodshed. Today, the long, hot feud has turned into a feel for good humor for both of them. It may not mean reteaming. Both are clicking as singles. Sorry. But blood pressures are down to the point where Dean showed up for one of Jerry's TV rehearsals and for a chat and then bowed out unscarred after saying, well, Jerry, lots of bad luck. A couple of days later, Jerry showed up for one of Dean's rehearsals and made a safe exit on the words, well, Dean, lots of bad luck. They did that more than once, though. For a while, they were going back and forth and doing stupid, crazy things like that to each other.
Well, that one, I think, was more on their 67 series, too. So when they both had shows at NBC 10 years later, is
which
sort
we'll
of the
get
same.
to.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment.
Because there is something there. But this was, which year was this one? Bad up to years, remember?
1957, so this is right when both of them started.
Yeah, okay, so this is, but I was going to say, because this is getting up close to when the Eddie Fisher show was then.
Yeah, so that would be the next year. We'll get to that.
Next year,
where they actually were on air together again.
Yes. But that's because, like, the reason why I said that is because they totally went about jumping, like, if they were there, they made themselves known to one another. They didn't just hide in the shadows. I'm sure there were things that we don't even know about that they saw each other in.
Yeah, well, phone conversations that,
Yeah.
Plenty of them happen, I'm sure. Okay, so this was the time that they reunited in 1957. to discuss their TV contracts. That link doesn't work anymore, but Dean said that for months I had been holding every hope of a get-together, but the moment I entered that room, I had a feeling that wasn't possible. We sat there face to face, but not a word passed between us. I think Mr. Wallace and the other Paramount officials present quickly caught the impression also that it was useless. So this goes against the idea that Dean just wanted out altogether and peace out Jerry and I don't care. You know, he wanted them to get back together.
Yeah, I think it was more of a professional, they wanted to split up, but not necessarily personal. But that things had been said and done that obviously when they got there it was too much for them. It was too soon.
Yeah, this just feels like really sad on Dean's end. Like, seems like he just wants Jerry and him to get back together as friends, and he wants Jerry to do something, but Jerry's heart was broken.
Dean said so many things so many times, and why would why would there be all this evidence of them still getting along, after the fact? I mean, I think that things were definitely said between them and there was definitely drama and all that, but I just think at this point it was still too close to when it happened. It's like you have a really, really horribly blowout with someone, and it takes a while for you to get to where you want to be in a room with them.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to get to that point. I mean, I have a friend that that happened with, and it took me years to talk to her again. So, I mean, it wasn't the same as Dean and Jerry, but
yeah,
just with what it was, I'm just saying that it was too much too soon, and it's like Dean was Dean, and he's more of a let's sweep it under the rug kind of guy.
Yeah,
and Jerry's much more obsess about it.
Obsess and avoid.
Yeah, obsess and avoid. So it kind of didn't quite work. Dean's hoping that they could get together and it can all just be brushed aside, and Jerry's like, no.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it into words, but that's kind of what it is.
So this is a picture I just found the other day, and the place where I found it said that this was the 1960s, which would obviously put it after the breakup, but I don't think by their faces, how their faces looked, that it was 1960s, because both of them, by that point, their faces had matured, and Jerry's face definitely doesn't look like that time era. It looks more 1957 through 59, probably more 57. Dean's looks late 50s for sure, but we can't be certain.
I don't know. I still say it looks kind of Rockabye Baby era to me.
So,
it's hard to tell because, that's around the time. What year was that?
He made it in 1957, but it came out in 1958.
Yeah, it looks like 50, around 57, 58 to me.
Mm-hmm. So
maybe 1959. They said the 60s, so I mean, it could have been 1960, early 1960.
Yeah, this photo is gonna drive me crazy because I know that Jerry's face was changing a lot during that time. Like, he would gain and lose weight, and then so his face was always changing around that time. And then Dean definitely looks older than he was when he was with Jerry. So it's like, ah,
I don't know either. I wish we knew. I hate not knowing.
This one is about the same time as the other. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis have kissed and made up after more than a year of feuding and fighting. Jerry, who has not seen or spoken to Dean in 14 months, well, not really, broke the ice when he telephoned Martin to wish him luck on his Saturday night TV show. "I just called to wish him the best," Jerry said. "It wasn't the easiest thing in the world, but I can't forget the 10 wonderful years we spent together." Dean, understandably jittery over starring in his first hour-long TV variety show, said, "It was good to talk to Jerry again. It was wonderful of him to call."
they would do things like that, call each other and privately, and they would sometimes, mention each other on air, even later on.
Yeah, they did. Or they made a lot of jokes referencing one another, too.
Mm-hmm. Kind of subliminal. Well, I don't know if it's subliminal messages, but just little comments that they would, say about each other to remember each other by. It was very, cute.
Yes.
I would say that they definitely were concerned and kept the concern about each other's health at all times. There's one coming up pretty soon where Dean was afraid that he had a brain tumor.
Yeah.
I think that was in 58. Let's see.
So this one is from 58, again with the TV rehearsals. We got "When Old Friends Meet," Jerry Lewis coming face to face with Dean Martin at the door of the Hollywood Brown Derby following their separate TV rehearsals, cracked to his former partner in a most friendly fashion, "You're great. How am I?"
And there's a lot of that happening around definitely in 1957 and 1958. I would say that 1958 was their biggest year for communication, and 1967.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Probably. I'd say that, but like I said, they did seem to go back and forth. Like if they saw each other at something, they were always talking to each other. It wasn't like they saw each other and they ran away. It was like constantly.
Except for that one time.
I said constantly. I said constantly.
So in 1958, Dean and Jerry were getting along again. And it says here, Dean is happy to have made up with Jerry Lewis and now gets good luck telegrams from his ex-partner. This was partly due to Dean's being extremely complimentary to Jerry when he was on the Edward R. Murrow person-to-person TV show. Jerry phoned Dean and said, "Did you mean those things you said about me?" "Of course I did," Dean said. Then, with a nice sense of humor, added, "I always mean everything I say about you." If Dean becomes great, it'll be with the help of Hal Wallace, who put him in pictures. So
this is around the time that they were starting to film The Young Lions. I think at that point, by that point, 10,000 Bedrooms, Dean's first movie, which was not great in any way, shape, or form. It would kind of fail at the box office, and so Dean was about to become successful, but on his own. But he wasn't quite there yet.
No, the Young Lions saved him. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately because it's a good movie if you just knock out Marlon Brando. Mushmouth, aka Mushmouth.
Yes.
His storyline is about a Nazi that tries to make everyone sad for themselves, sad for him. Who wants to be sad for a Nazi? Another Nazi. That's it. No, the Young Lions saved him. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately because it's a good movie if you just knock out Marlon Brando. Mushmouth, aka Mushmouth.
Yes.
His storyline is about a Nazi that tries to make everyone sad for themselves, sad for him. Who wants to be sad for a Nazi? Another Nazi. That's it.
Yes, for those who don't know, we don't like Marlon Brando here. If you have a problem with that, I'm sorry, but he mumbles, as Frank Sinatra would say. He called him the mumbler. He worked with him on Guys and Dolls, and he
Yes.
did not like him.
No.
Dean kind of got along with him. Jerry, apparently, Mushmouth, Marlon Brando, didn't like Jerry at all.
No.
He was upset that Jerry was...
But the Mushmouth came from a review of Dean because of Mushmouth, Marlon running his mouth off about Dean being a bad actor, and the person's like, a bad actor? Talk about being you with speaking Mushmouthese. I just love that. And I'm like...
Yes, it makes sense.
In this house, we praise Dean, and we at the Mushmouth.
Yeah, Dean, Mushmouth didn't like Jerry because he was imitating him on television, and he didn't.
Oh, yeah, and he didn't like what he saw.
Yeah.
Gee, I wonder why.
So here, as you see here, from the Edward R. Murrow show that we were just talking about before that Dean appeared on, it says, what have you regarded as the biggest break of your life? Most wonderful break was meeting Jerry Lewis. Gene Martin pulls back. We had 10 wonderful years, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And I think that it was a real lucky break for me. Then it said that was an interview that Jerry was giving at the time, and I guess Dean passed by or something, and then Jerry asked that no photographs would be taken of them. Sure what was going on there, why he was being so secretive.
Because it's Jerry. That's really the only explanation.
I guess.
Like later on, as you'll see in the next couple of things, they started to take pictures of them. So because they were more and more public and going to parties or running into each other at parties where these things couldn't be avoided. So this next thing is from 1958 at Judy Garland's Coconut Grove reunion.
Yeah.
She had a show there. She had a show there. They were reunited.
They were reuniting.
Okay, so we have Judy Garland's opening at the Coconut Grove. I can barely read it, but I'll try here. One of the nicest things in the middle of all good love and friendship is Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis laughing it up together as if the good old days were here again. Then here's a picture of them from 1958.
Yes.
And with Frank Sinatra. So
Yes.
Frank was there. Frank seems to be a person that's often in these photos.
Well, that's because he was friends with them both.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize that he and Jerry were actually good friends. People always just see Frank Sinatra and think Dean Martin, but Frank Sinatra, Jerry Lewis, same connection. Just because Jerry wasn't part of the Rat Pack doesn't mean that they weren't friends.
So this was another picture. This one was from the 1958 reunion. I knew I had another photo. So there's Frank Sinatra again with them. So we have like two photos from 1958 and two from 1961. And okay, so we're going back to February 19th, 1958 here. It says Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin end feud. They bury the hatchet, thereby ending the most sizzling feud in show business. The 3-year vendetta, marked by loud shouting and even louder silences, came to a close when the pair met on a Palm Springs golf course and shook hands, agreeing the whole thing was pretty silly. MCA, which is the Music Corporation of America, says they represent both, saying nothing has been heard about Jerry and Dean teaming up again. But Jerry's business manager, Jack Teller, it's actually Jack Keller, relayed from Las Vegas, where Jerry is appearing, that it's unlikely they'll ever get together on a professional basis in the foreseeable future. After all, Teller contends, I don't know why they got his name wrong, Jerry made $5 million. Whoa.
Yeah, that is a lot. I was looking at that price too, and I'm like, dang, boy.
$5 million by himself last year, and Dean is doing great on his NBC show and his movie work. But all that animosity that existed between these two is over. Or so they thought.
Yeah, this is during when when Jerry was throwing his mouth off, and then Dean was throwing his mouth off, and then they were just like cat fight.
Yeah, there was a cat fight. Well, this was right before the cat fight. They're kind of in a good mood towards each other. This was February 1958. And later in the year is when it really went off.
Went off.
And
they were caterwauling.
Yes, indeed. So the next thing was the Eddie Fisher show, which Jerry appeared on, and Dean decided to bring Bing Crosby. Are you singing?
Yes, I was mimicking him.
I was like, I don't hear you singing.
I'm not going to actually sing. People don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that.
Like, Dean brought Bing Crosby, which also Jerry says he hasn't seen for a long time, or ever. That's a whole other topic also. There was an incident between Bing Crosby and Jerry Lewis, which they might not have spoken to each other or been friends, but they did see each other. So that is the truth there. So let's get into that appearance. Quick photo. We have this one was more public, I would say, from September 30th, 1958. Dean appears out of nowhere, as you'll see right here.
What I have to do, will you do me a favor? Let me do what I have to do.
Jerry, I would be very...
Just don't sing. Do it. Return to me. You know, it's amazing.
The blue of the night.
Was that the other fellow?
That was the other fellow.
Oh, it's amazing how he's changed. Will you let me say what I was going to say?
So, Return to Me was obviously Dean Martin's hit at that time. So that's when he started becoming, getting more success as a single, as a solo artist. He had that hit, and then he had Young Lions out. So, and I don't know why he brought Bing, of all people, randomly, Bing Crosby out there, but, you know, he wanted to tease Jerry too. Probably to get him back for the toupee incident. Perhaps.
I just love the instantaneousness of the over like freaking out in the crowd. Everyone just lost that. It was like everyone was like, I could just imagine people like throwing things in the air. Girls were ready to whip out their bras.
just like the old days. Like, going to that for a moment. The reaction to them. I guess Norman Turon, their director of several of their films, said that the response was orgiastic.
Yes.
People were like fainting, and like apparently in this one article I read, girls were mooing. Like the woman was like, it's okay to moo. Like, I don't know what that means.
Moo. I don't know. I've never heard of sexually mooing before. Mewing either, but mooing.
I would hope that they wouldn't.
Like what?
Moo.
Moo.
Like, I would hope they wouldn't be mooing at them and embarrassing themselves like that.
I just imagine someone walking up seductively to someone. Moo.
Like, I don't know what they would be doing other than that. Like, what does that even mean? Like,
moo moo ka-choo.
Well, it must have been a sight to see. I can imagine what they were like. The girls faint.
I guess they're letting you know their tits are out and waiting to be squeezed.
On that note, well, we'll move on. We had to take a moment and stop recording, but we're back now. So 1958, after that appearance, late 1958, Eddie Fisher had asked Dean Martin to appear on his show, but Dean didn't like the amount that he was going to be paid, and something about kitchen equipment, like appliances that he wanted for his home that they were going to give him. It was very strange, like payment for Dean's appearance. So Jerry was like, had heard about this, that Dean had quit the show, and Jerry went to Eddie Fisher, who was also a friend of his, and said, hey, I'll do the show for free or for a small payment or something. I don't think he could actually do anything for free, because Dean and Jerry got in trouble several times for doing free shows as it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, but it was very small payment. And so this was like around Christmas, I believe. So like Dean was pretty bitter after that, because he kind of felt that he got he was made to look the bad guy, and around Christmas, and he didn't really like how the light that it put him in. And I mean, understandably so, but Dean put this upon himself, really. I don't think Jerry meant to make Dean look like the bad guy, but like he had to help out a friend. And Dean definitely put this on himself.
Dean
So
wanted it a little bit too diva.
Yeah, this is when the bitter teenage girl stuff really took off. But let's get into the next reunion, was at the 1959 Oscars, which was another myth of going 20 minutes over or under, under the time that they were supposed to. It ran really short. But in actuality,
does that happen nowadays?
Yeah, like what? And when you look at this myth, like I have been waiting to see this video for years, like this catastrophe that's apparently happened that people talked about. It's not a catastrophe. It was like 5 minutes. 5 to 6 minutes tops. and like, you know, the television stations knew to cut away after a while. Yes, it was awkward, as you'll see. We'll just pull up a tiny part of it where Dean is mentioned by Jerry on stage. Jerry was the host of these Oscars. Actually, he was co-host.
Actually, I should have had this available on me, and I didn't. But on a what is the name of it? It's like a little magazine you get in the newspaper every weekend. I can't remember what it's called, but they actually featured this on the cover. I couldn't believe, because I showed you this picture.
Yes.
Remember, it happened right after my mom died, and I was like, oh my God, and my dad saved it for me. And they were mentioned on the thing, and it was like mentioned about this Oscar thing, and about how like this was one of the biggest Oscar moments in history. Basically, there was like a list of 100, I think, and it made it to the list of like one of the most iconic moments in Oscar history. And I was like, I can't believe that they actually printed proof that they didn't not stop talking to each other, that they still were in existence, that they still orbited each other. And I was like, ah. So I just wanted to, I can't remember what the name of the magazine is, and I still have it because I didn't throw it.
Oh, I think I
I took
I'll have
pictures
to
and
look
sent
for
it
it
to
later. Yeah, I'll have to look for it later.
I just wanted, because that was like this year that it happened.
Though this one, like it's weird because how big that they're making this, like that they made this. It's not really an embarrassing moment, I would say, like necessarily. They did what they had to do. Let's just show it to you. So we have everybody on stage.
Lionel, 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 Newman. And they said Dean and I wouldn't be on a stage together again.
I'm gonna stop it there, but like because it goes on for like 5 minutes. But yeah, you can see Dean and Sophia Loren dancing later on. Dean like grabs an Oscar. That's really funny. But like I think there's that moment where Jerry looks, and I'm pretty sure he probably looked at Dean and like kind of winks almost. Or a gleam in his eye anyway. I think he was looking at Dean there, for sure. And this was around the time that they had their little differences in print. Cat fights in print. So like Dean was coming out saying people like this shouldn't be in show business if they're doing stuff for free, which he did when he did stuff for free when he was with Jerry, you know. And he's saying that nobody should be doing shows for free, and they shouldn't be in show business. Jerry doesn't belong in show business. Like, he's not funny, blah, blah, blah. Like, he started saying all this horrible stuff, even stuff, he went so far as to attack Jerry's work with MDA at the time, which was, I mean, he wasn't, he had been hosting a few shows. I'm not sure if he hosted any ones solo at that point. I know he had gone around, you know, and, you know, it wasn't an annual thing like it later became in 1966. I think they just did specials occasionally. It wasn't the yearly thing, but they did it every year, but it was just at different, you know,
but it was like it wasn't like an all-night thing either.
Yeah, at that point, I think Dean and Jerry had hosted, you know, yearly ones together. At different points. So Dean distanced himself, unfortunately, from all that. I don't know why he felt like he needed to attack Jerry on that.
Why did
He do anything? I don't know.
Why did he? I mean, some of the stuff Jerry said some bad stuff too. It wasn't just Dean. They're both of them were
I would say
catty teenagers.
Well, there's not been many instances that I've seen Jerry saying bad stuff. Like there's a couple, but for what Dean said, Dean definitely topped him in that way, and very in bitterness, if you were, as you will. So like all the things he said like really hurt Jerry, so that kind of like made Jerry distrust him, and like did he ever care about me, basically, or were we friends?
Yeah.
So that affected him later on, for sure. Now we're gonna go to 1960, which is around the time where Jerry directed his first film, The Bellboy, and Jerry was sick for, like, he had been editing his film at the Sands Hotel, and he just was overworked, overtired, and apparently something had to have happened. I mean, they did make a phone call to each other because Dean filled in for him for at least one night. And I'm going to show you some. Yes.
I got a question because I'm, as you know, bad with dates. When is it that they both had the restaurant on that were beating up each other and they were constantly
That
back and forth?
was, I believe that, I'll have to check really quickly. I believe that was 1962. So
62,
they haven't hit that point yet.
Okay, I couldn't remember. I'm like, I know it was like late 50s, early 60s, but.
Okay, there was something that I forgot to mention from the last clip. Dean didn't have a microphone when he was at the Oscars and the on stage, and he shot back once Jerry said, like, and they said Dean and I would never be on the same stage again. Dean shot back, "He needs me." So, like, that wasn't heard, but like I think like I saw that in an article somewhere.
Yeah, that people were talking about it that could hear it.
Yeah. So the next thing that we had been talking about was the 1960 thing where Jerry had been editing. So it's
yeah, okay.
So we had Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin reconciled early today on the same stage where they once had their worst fights. Patrons at a Las Vegas hotel, which was the Sands, I believe. The ad-libbed reunion stems from an incident from several weeks ago. Dean was shooting Ocean's 11 when he complained about severe headaches and dizzy spells. Word got out that he might have had a brain tumor. That's when Jerry was shooting The Bellboy in Miami Beach. When he heard of Dean's fears, he forgot the feud and called his old partner. The call was formal, like Truman calling Eisenhower. A close friend of Jerry said, but Dean knew that Jerry was sincerely worried. Fortunately, Dean's headaches were caused by overwork, not a tumor. In a few days' rest, he bounced back. So they, hold on. We're kind of in the way of that. This is where it talks about what happened. So Dean filled in for Jerry, but Jerry joined him on stage. And they did 15 minutes of stuff that they used to do. So let's see. It was.
Could you imagine being the people in that crowd?
Yeah, they probably similar to the reaction that was on the Eddie Fisher.
There must have been a lot of mooing.
There A lot of fluing. Well, and it says here, not a dry eye in the house, including ours, which is the person who wrote this article.
Yeah.
They got on stage. I guess this one doesn't look like it shows where they so they did some a boxing, like Jerry came on with boxing gloves and they did some of that act. I can't see that here on this one. That might be another clipping that I have. But this was on March 14th, 1960. After the show, Dean had to rush back, catch a train to LA, and they talked for 10 minutes backstage, and they felt really good. I have something to add to this in a second. What Dick Stabile, who used to do the music, the band leading for the team,
the band leader.
he remained friends with Jerry Lewis after the breakup. He kind of sided with Jerry, and his brother became Jerry's manager years later. But at this point, he wondered, like, what was Dean's problem? You know, he kind of slammed into him basically after this reunion. Says, oh, okay. It says in this clipping, Dean is doing just great. He doesn't need anybody to help him in what he's doing, and I'm doing fairly well too. Oh yes, it says they sang "My Heart Cries for You," which was one of their main songs that they used a lot throughout the years that they were together. And it says, I still maintain that our problems never really stem from the two of us, but from the fringe. Because if I were ever in trouble, the first one in line, you could bet, would be Dean, and vice versa.
Yes.
So yeah, it was the
Dean
hangers on.
Yeah, Dean said that himself. He said that when they were still together, that some of the problems that they were facing were because of outsiders. It wasn't Dean and Jerry, it was the people surrounding them.
Yeah. And Jerry had a lot of people telling him, yes, and like never, questioning him basically. And they always and Jean Martin didn't help.
No.
She did not help at all. But like and even after Dean told him that he had this problem with these people, he still kept these people around for years and years and years. And people would undermine or, underestimate Dean's abilities as a performer and singer and actor and all these things, and saying that you don't need him. And then Dean's people would say, you don't need this crazy person, with you either. And it got to them eventually. And what was I going to say? Jerry he definitely knew he had this problem because he made fun of it in The Bellboy, where these hangers on and people who didn't really care about him, these fake people,
People were using him for his status.
Yeah. Whispers Tony Curtis.
Yeah.
Tony Curtis kind of used him to get ahead a little bit there. And other people, for instance, Danny Arnold apparently didn't like Dean. He was a writer and friend of theirs, but not really of Dean's. There's just a lot of people that, broke them up, and he started not trusting not going to Dean for, suggestions or like trying things out, and Dean resented that. He's not looking to me anymore for suggestions or for, to see if something's funny. He's looking to these other people who are always going to say, yeah, this is amazing. And I think part of the reason, because Jerry wanted to do the pathos and Charlie Chaplin
Yeah.
and stuff, that once Dean was like, I don't like that, I think he started not to like
Yeah.
listen.
But the funny thing is that their wives, Patty was encouraging Jerry to get along with Dean and to work things out with them, with one another. She was very much like that. Whereas Jean was like, you can do without Jerry. Get away from him. You don't need him. Blah, 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 blah. We don't like Jean in this house. But Patty was very encouraging and she was very supportive, but she didn't want Jerry to get sucked up into all the fakeness.
and you have to remember, like, I think, Jerry did, to be fair, strike back about Jean first, and then, Dean
Yes.
went after Patty for whatever reason. Like, she didn't.
Which was so
deserve that.
stupid because we all know that Dean loved Patty.
Yeah, there's far more pictures of Dean, Patty, and Jerry together than,
Yes.
Jean with them and stuff.
I mean, Patty had been there from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's stupid. Something to add more to this. This is what Dick Stabill said. Actually, it wasn't Dick Stabill. I totally lied.
oh.
It was Jack Keller or Jack Keller as the one place. Yeah, I thought it was Dick Stabill. Dick Stabill did say stuff about Dean, though, however.
Yeah, no, he did.
Yeah, but Jack Keller is the one in Who the Hell's in It, which is Pierre Bogdanovich's book. There's a chapter on Jerry Lewis and also a chapter later on Dean. So it talks about the Sands reunion briefly and the events leading up to it. Jack Keller said that a couple of years ago, so this is around 1962 that this interview was happening. So he was recalling 1960. He said, Jerry and Patty were in a Las Vegas club. Dean was filling in for him. They hadn't spoken in like for 4 years, which is odd because they had. I don't know why they're doing this again, but suddenly Dean sees Jerry sitting at a table, comes over and sits down. He's very friendly and he talks about old times. He tells Jerry he's got a train to catch and asks him whether he'd fill in at the end of the show. I think this was, so they got on stage together. They did a little bit and then Jerry took over basically. Anyway, Dean went on and he announced, ladies and gentlemen, there's a fella sitting in the audience that I'd like you to meet, my partner, Jerry Lewis. He said, not my former partner, but my partner.
But they always refer to each other as my partner. They never said my former partner.
Yeah. And even in Dean's shows later on, like he would say, that's my partner, and he would always go after, like somebody from the audience would say something and he'd be like, they would expect Dean to like say something nasty, but
Yeah, it was always my partner. They never, that's because it was, set in stone. That's what it was. Even if they weren't together, they were together.
Yeah, and Dean said, I shook my hands on this till death do us part.
Do us part, yeah.
Yeah. It also says, so everybody was bawling. He and Jerry recreated some of their old routines, and they asked each other, did we really do this shit? And then they do a soft shoe. Dean leaves to catch his train, and then Jerry finishes the show. He says, now get this. Not long afterward, in an interview, Dean slams into Jerry like crazy. Go figure. So, that was strange.
At this point, Dean is just being like a teenage girl that wants his boyfriend back. He's just like saying all these things. No, I didn't say that. Why do you mean I said that? I did not say that. 5 minutes later. Blah, 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 blah. I did not say that. That's what Dean is like.
I think it was also Jack Keller who says like, Jerry's, bitter about Dean like an old flame, like something
teenager,
like that. Yeah.
Teenager old flame though. We're getting into like the, like the 16-year-old, like I'm gonna talk shit about this person because I don't want them to, because they said something mean about me or they hurt my feelings. So I'm going to say all this and blah, 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 blah. But then they come to your face. Hi. That's
Basically.
what it is.
So now we're gonna get into 1961 at
Here we go.
the Coconut Grove.
Grove.
We got the Coconut Grove. Okay, so there's this picture. Frank Sinatra again. He always seems to be bringing them back. They're having a good time. Dean's got the sideburns going. We have, hold on. So that one is just Dean and Jerry privately.
Mm-hmm.
So that one was a new one I found recently. And now we're going to go see actual footage.
Hip hip hooray. Yay!
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I was like, oh my goodness, there was another time.
I know.
I was seeing that for the first time was like
Yeah,
amazing.
that was like years ago now, but I think that was the first, like I said, the first footage I saw outside of the telethon of a reuniting of them.
Yeah, and
how many more did they reunite? Because I don't believe them.
Yeah, I think that one was the one that started it all. Must find all reunions.
Must find all reunion. Must do this. That's what that was about.
This is This is our new career now.
Basically.
So then we go to something must have happened during 1961 where they were I don't know, Jerry started avoiding Dean again. There's this clipping, it's not clipping, it's an actual screenshot of an excerpt from the book Everybody Loves Somebody Sometime. Now, this one I would take with a grain of
salt. Yeah.
Especially, like, how did they know what they were saying? Was Arthur Marks a fly in the wall in their office? I don't know. I would assume something happened like this at some time, but it's like very strange that he knew everything that everybody was saying. So when Jerry and Dean were both on the Paramount lot, Dean was making all in the night's work, for Hal Wallace. Dean used to see Jerry driving around the lot on his golf cart. And he was very hopeful that they would finally come face to face so that they could make up. Every time Jerry would start like ducking to avoid a confrontation. So it says Jerry did that to him 3 or 4 times. Eventually Dean walked over to Jerry's office through all the secretaries, and he went and stormed into Jerry's office. Why are you ducking me? What's the matter with you? And then Jerry was like, I didn't mean it like that. And then Dean was like, I just saw you. You just did it. And then Jerry said that it didn't feel right. I mean, some of this sounds like something they would actually say.
Well, I think Dean really did barge his way through and come in and be all like, yo, Jerry, what the hell?
I think there were witnesses to this, but like whether or not the conversation went directly quote those words.
Yeah, the quote, you gotta take it as a paraphrase at its highest. But I do think that there is truth behind it.
Yeah. So they basically had drinks and warmed up a little to each other again.
I like when Dean invites him up to his, because anyone can walk in on them there.
Like definitely. And then like it says Jerry was okay with it. He's like, yeah, I've been silly. But then he started, the next time he saw him again, he started doing it again. So that sounds very Jerry.
I was just gonna say that sounds exactly something that Jerry would do. I was literally about to say that. This sounds very Jerry.
So I'm pretty sure this happened to some degree. And it says that some heckler in the audience would often interrupt Dean's nightclub act, and by shouting, "Hey, Dean, where's Jerry?" and or say something, "Jerry's here." I'll finish this off. It said that I don't know where he is, but wherever he is, he must be doing fine because he has bundles of talent and he's a wonderful guy. Then he said, "How you feel now, you jerk?" Like there's a recording of him saying that too. And then there's also another recording where somebody was yelling that Jerry was in the audience, and then Dean was like, "I wish he was here. Like, I wish he would be there." You know, he did miss Jerry a lot of the time. I think it was very hard on them to be so long without each other, and for whatever reasons they just wanted to be teenage girls about it. This next clipping is about the same time, so it's exactly the same time actually. So there was rumors of Jerry and Dean hanging out on the set of all in a Night's Work.
Yeah.
Now, this one doesn't say anything really other than this is from 1962, April 21st, that Jerry has been a regular visitor on the set of Who's Got the Action. I said it all in a Night's Work. Oh, okay, sorry. This is Who's Got the Action. So he did that right after.
Right after.
So this is 1962. Sorry. Now, it says that they might bury the hatchet. I think partially that Jerry just wanted to see Lana Turner. That's why. And Dean, but, maybe he was keeping an eye on them because, Jerry always had the thing for Lana Turner. And
a little bit,
he was upset that Dean was kissing her first or whatever. I don't know. So they had, this was right after the incident that we just talked about where he stormed the office. So they were kind of ducking each other, but also spending time together. I don't know. Now, we're going to get to a part. So like around 1963, 64, 65, there's not really much that happened, I would say. I don't think
not much that we know about.
Yes. I think a lot of changes were happening in that time. I do know, I think Dean made some remark when Jerry lost his show. He would always they took your show away, Jerry, or something like that. He would just do it in fun. During his act, he would make that comment that Jerry's show, ABC show got taken away. So he would include that as a little jab. But I think it was friendly. So there is footage in 1966 that is missing. When I first became a fan, I wish I would have saved some stuff. And I didn't foresee that these things would be gone online when we needed them. But there is, there was a thing on YouTube from the Golden Globes in 1967 where Dean and Jerry were seen, talking to each other. Jerry was a presenter. I think they were both presenters, actually.
I think so.
Of the war. They were mentioning what that's called presenters.
Yeah, they were a presenter.
I don't know what I was trying to say. They're both presenters And so they probably talked to each other backstage. I do remember both of them being interviewed. It was like a Hollywood backstage show, and it does exist. I tried to buy it from somebody and they wouldn't let me have it. So that makes me very upset that this isn't online anymore. But I remember Jerry saying it was really nice to see Dean. Dean said something similar. I think they were kind of not wanting to be interviewed about it, it seemed, though.
Yeah.
So, but that was the 1967 Golden Globes. Now, when Cy DeVore, who was owned a very famous suit store, I don't think did he sell anything else besides suits?
No, I don't think so.
So Jerry wore all the Cy DeVore suits. He had his children in Cy DeVore suits. Everybody had, him and Dean loved Cy DeVore. He was a good friend to them. And
definitely.
So they reunited briefly after Cy DeVore passed away. And there was talk about them getting together, possibly.
Yeah, they had wanted to do something together. Actually, I think they had wanted to get together to do like a special one night only kind of thing. But there was also at one point talk about them wanting to do a movie together.
Was this in an article or in the book? Because I don't have the article for that. It might be in the article that you have.
Yeah, I think it was, because wasn't I the first one that found out about that? And then I was like, hey, did you hear about this?
Yeah, I think you have the article.
Yeah, and there were, okay.
So there's that. So in a moment, I'm just gonna go to the clipping of where they're talking about the Cy DeVore funeral reunion.
Article from let's see, it's from November 1966. Tragedy reunites Martin and Lewis. So we have very dramatic start right there, and then so it talks about Jerry and Dean reuniting at the funeral. They contacted the grief-stricken widow of Cy DeVore, Erica. They gave her, they sent a large bouquet of flowers, and it says that they were really good friends with Cy, and he was kind of, he didn't take sides, basically.
Yeah.
So this is a lot of stuff this is a lot of stuff to read through, so I'm just gonna have it sit there. It says that Martin and Lewis gradually through the years managed to mellow their feelings towards each other. For a time following their divorce, only bitterness prevailed. This bitterness tamed to personal indifferences. With the death of their favorite tailor, Martin and Lewis found themselves united again for the first time since the old days in a common cause to mourn their great loss. Let's see. It says that they were his best friends. Cy can never be replaced in my heart. He was a great friend, Jerry said. This one said that Cy never directly acted as a peacemaker. He never told either Jerry or Dean to let bygones be bygones and become close friends again. This would have only created more animosity. Cy merely made his feelings known that he liked them both, and he played no favorites. But occasionally he passed on information to Jerry that he saw Dean and he looked great, or that he would tell Dean that he had dinner with Patty and Jerry, and they sure have a wonderful family. So he's kind of letting them know how each other was doing, and so
and then like how it says here that one of his proudest moments was when Dean and Jerry publicly buried the hatchet. But I like
Yeah.
I like the emphasis on publicly.
Yeah.
Thus meaning that there probably was some sort of personal moment where they buried the hatchet. So they must have had like a personal meeting at some point where they talked to one another and
Yeah,
kind of-
definitely. Like as it says, talks about that 1960 Sands Hotel thing. They probably got together, obviously, beforehand and said, "Hey, let's surprise people and let's do this." You know,
Yeah.
Jerry just didn't bring boxing gloves for no reason. He came on stage with boxing gloves.
Yeah. But I mean, what I also meant is like they must have had personal talks where they were able to discuss their issues that they had
Yeah.
and their feelings. As
So this-
hard as that must have been for Dean to do.
Yeah, and this says like Sidevor was sitting ringside when the two embraced each other on stage and posed together for a group of dumbfounded photographers. Where are these photographs? I want these photographs. These better show up one day.
I know.
And it says this marked the first time they had shaken hands prior to the team shattering the dispute. I guess, yeah. Not necessarily, since we saw the 1958 stuff and, you know,
Yeah.
that. Sidevor beamed with satisfaction. He knew all too well that it was too late to expect the two to resume what they had once shared together. Too many years had passed. Each had carved his own niche in Hollywood. However, they were speaking again, certainly to go down in show business annals as a major feat. Unfortunately, Jerry and Dean remained on a partially strained relationship basis following the Sands Hotel get-together. Possibly it wasn't deliberate. After all, what did they have in common? The party was indeed over. Jerry has his own world of business and friends, and so does Dean. With the passing of Sidevor and the start of a legend, Martin and Lewis discovered they do have a very precious thing in common, the memory of their friend. Perhaps with this in mind, they'll be able to completely mend the fences. Cy once prayed for this.
Yeah.
So, you know, this was so this was around the time, as you said, before, where they also had talked about doing that show together.
Oh, yeah.
A rumor of them doing a show together, or something in your article.
Yeah, which unfortunately I don't have right now to show. But yeah, there was an article where they say that they wanted to do some sort of public show. Actually, I think it might have been a string of shows, like a couple of not just one show. It might have been like a couple, and it might have been like a month's worth of shows that they were for 1 month. They wanted to get back together, something like that, and do a couple of, not every week, but I think it was something like a couple in New York and maybe a couple in Hollywood, kind of a thing.
Yeah, probably.
But there was also talk that at one point they were talking about doing a movie together again. There was, I don't know much about it, but I remember that there was a movie.
Okay. That is in 1982, and we will talk about that when we get to that point.
I do believe, though, that started them off, and they started talking to each other back and forth personally after this.
Your article definitely said that one. I wish we could show.
Yeah, I don't have it right now.
I guess we didn't post those.
No,
Show those
I don't know. No, because I think that I got it when I didn't have a scanner at all. Because I only just got a scanner after my mom died. Because before that, that's why I hadn't scanned anything in years, because it went. And then I finally got one. So at some point, I'm gonna have to go through and scan a lot of stuff.
We have tons of articles. We have a whole boxes and boxes. But something I did remember. article that Patty discussed the Golden Globes reunion. What was this one? So it says Dean and Jerry were presenters at the Golden Globes Awards a few years ago. We know it's real, even if the video doesn't exist online anymore. They met backstage and Dean gave Jerry the biggest hug and said, "There's my pal." And Jerry hugged him right back. He was so thrilled. There have been other meetings like this. So Patty's like confirming, hey, they're meeting a lot like this. So, still, Dean's uncomfortable with Jerry and can never sit and talk for any length of time. But I understand that Dean is pretty much this way with everybody. It says, she talks about like Jerry and herself running into Claudia and Gail Martin, Dean's two daughters, many times, and then there was like hugs and kisses between them, and you know they had been there for them when they were growing up and very small children. And then they still love Jerry. There's a photo of Jerry and I believe it's Gail or Claudia. It's you always mix those two girls up. They look very alike. I think it was Gail, but there's a picture of Jerry and Gail backstage somewhere. And then
wasn't Jerry invited to their weddings, but he didn't go because he thought it would overshadow them because of like Dean and Jerry reuniting.
It could have been. I'm not sure if I heard that.
I think so. I think it was like Claudia and Gail I'm talking about.
Okay. Was it in one of his books? Because that might have been.
Maybe. I'm so bad with remembering where it's like I'm pretty sure there was some mention though, and Jerry didn't go for that reason. So
let's move on to so Dean and Jerry both had TV shows at NBC again in 1967. So after Dean's father died, Jerry came to Dean's dressing room and offered Dean his condolences. They embraced and it looked like old times again. Then Dean gave a plug to Jerry's opening show on his own. Then there's this fun thing. This is a very crappy scam, but I want the video of this so bad, but I know it will never happen. Jerry appeared as one of the dancing girls, one of the girls dancing in the background. I can only imagine. While, Dean was there, and he was walking across the stage. And I think I saw it was like, I'm pretty sure they didn't tape that. I think they did tape rehearsals sometimes, but they didn't tape that.
I think they would have taped them, but they didn't release.
Yeah, see, because it says whether or not it will be used for TV viewing is still being decided by NBC moguls.
Yeah.
So I think that, somewhere
do you know
somebody...
how hard it is even now to get the Dean Martin show, like uncut episodes and full episodes? Every single episode that's ever been made hasn't even been come out because they're stupid. Oh, and the Dean Martin estate. Oh.
Yeah. So like we probably won't ever see it. So that's heartbreaking. So now I don't think I have any more clippings from 1967. There was just a lot of talk about them getting back together. Actually, there was another clipping, but it's just speculation basically about Jerry appearing on Dean's show, Dean appearing on Jerry's show.
Yeah.
That's basically the summation of those articles. There's a lot of them, a lot of the time. And there was a lot of articles actually about Dean and Jerry and people wishing that they would reunite.
I know.
In 1967, it was really
People just like, they're just like, it's been over 10 years and we still want them together. Like, that was how hard they went for them, okay?
yeah. Like I'm kind of no, I'm not surprised about like how great people still wanted them, like how they yearned.
Yeah.
Apparently,
As I said, they went hard for them.
Yeah, they were still dreaming. They were still dreaming about this reunion 10 years later.
Listen, it's 2020 and they're both gone and I'm still dreaming about it.
They're together now. They're together. They're doing their show now. So I guess we can.
I want to see it, okay? I want to see it. Send me to heaven for a few minutes. Let me check that out. I'll sit down, talk to my mom, watch them perform, descend back.
So we're going to get to the big one that probably everybody's all seen, but we'll get to that right now. We are back.
With the big one.
With the
We're
big
gonna
one.
do the big one.
The other one is a check for $1,000 from the Stardust Hotel.
And another check for $1,000 from the Stardust Hotel. That's beautiful. Thank you.
And the organization, $5,000 check on behalf of my two grandchildren, Amanda and A.J. Lambert, because they're healthy. You do that one more time, we're going to buy the furniture. Listen, I have a friend who loves what you do every year and who just wanted to come out. Would you send my friend out, please? Where is he? We just send him out here. Come here. All right, break it up. Break it up. What is this here? Break it up. I think it's about time, don't you?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's about time. We folk.
Should have been a Jew that did it.
We could whip the world without the guns of Navarro. There they are, folks.
I don't know.
So how you been?
You know, it seems like we haven't seen each other for 20 years.
Well, you know, there was all those rumors about our breaking up, and then when I started the show and you weren't here, I believed it.
I'll show you guys to your room. If you like, the lights are out upstairs, so follow me if you want.
Oh, he drinks a lot, this kid.
So you working?
I work 6 weeks a year at the Megum.
The Megum?
And 6 days I do a roast. And
would you excuse us a minute?
I just want to see the wires are all right.
Gee, it's nice to see you.
No,
I'm over here.
No, I had to come in because I had to, you know, I had to go, and this was the closest place.
You always have to go.
I always drink. You know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was your line.
I have to get you off somewhere. You better get out of here.
I got off last night.
No.
We have a melody.
We got a melody to do.
Melody?
yes.
All right, together?
Yeah, goodbye, Jerry.
Oh, okay.
So long. It's been nice to see you,
Well,
Jerry.
there we go again.
Goodbye, folks.
Thanks for coming over.
I didn't mean to wake you.
Dream a while and scheme a while. Sure to find.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
I can see him now. Oh, yeah. How about that? Pretty good entertainment at this hour.
I just wanted to say, I mean, I watched you for 5 hours, and I saw on the side, all you got is $733.16.
3 million.
Oh, that's a phone number.
That's the phone
Oh.
number.
Let's hear it.
Song, Jer.
Dino. Thank you, sweetheart. Oh. Oh, yes. Getting on with the rest. Oh, boy. Well, I tell you one thing. When Francis Albert is around...
So emotional. He was so emotional. Whoa.
Yeah. So that coincided with what I was talking about earlier with the Gold Diggers, Maria Lauren Albericio. She was a member from 1973 to 1991. For the Gold Diggers anyway, bonding show during the 70s. Before the telethon reunion, she says, Dean let us in on private messages and jokes written with our lipstick that he had been leaving for Jerry Lewis via his dressing room mirror. Jerry played at the MGM Grand and had left Dean some razzing but good-humored remarks on the mirror prior to our engagement. Dean was like a little boy bragging about it to us. Look at what I wrote to Jerry. Look what Crazy wrote to me. I answered him real good. He was so cute, they said.
Yeah, it was like a throwback to what they did before they got together. So cute. So cute.
There was, I just found this other thing from 1958 where they were on another TV show. They had to have seen each other. So there's that. I keep finding random things that I forgot about. But yeah, there's like another.
Basically, there's a lot of stuff. They saw each other. This whole 20-year gap is false.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist.
A lot, especially in 1958. It was like it was a television special for Dodgers boosters.
Okay.
For Prop B. I'm not sure what that is. There's photos. Oh, hold on, let me do the photos really fast. So, there's photos there, and then they were on the same show.
Yes. They weren't together, but they had to have seen each other at some point.
Let's go to another, what I would say would have been another major reunion had it been televised. It's kind of similar to the 1976 one, but this one takes place at the Aladdin Hotel in 1977 with Frank. Frank's always there. Dean and Frank were in the middle of a show, and Jerry just happened to pop in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
And then he...
I just want to say one thing. They told me that you two guys were going to be on a certain time. Look at me. I just came off the stage. I almost busted my ass to get over here. I can hear you two guys are doing a goddamn career.
Oh, it's all right. Get a bus.
Are you in town long? Hi, big guy.
Who's that? Hey, how are you, Jerry? Say something here. Oh, thank you. I thought he'd heard something.
It's such a lovely thing. I really don't want to disturb the beauty of this. The marquee says Sinatra and Martin.
Did you say Marky?
No. Martin.
And I think there's a Marky.
No, the marquee.
Oh, I thought he said Marky. Oh.
Is he drinking again?
Oh. Sorry, Mike.
And I just wanted to come and say hello to these two lovely, wonderful persons who I have known over the years personally, and that the beauty of Dean working with this band singer is such a joy. And I just wanted to come here and see them and to tell all of you that are here present tonight that I am going to be working with George Burns.
Burns and Lewis?
Well, it ain't going to be Lewis and Burns.
Very low.
You were saying...
You were saying something about Benjamin Franklin's wife, Aretha, did what?
So you can see, I'm going to show photos from that in a moment, but like the thunderous applause.
Yes, the crowds were still crazy.
That you can barely hear anything that's happening, but you know, they're going wild. Let's see these photos really fast. I can see them. So it was Frank and Dean's show, and then Jerry pops on. And they're having a good time there. So this was August 23rd, 1977. And then Jerry said, I just wanted to come and say that hello to these two lovely, wonderful persons who I've known over the years personally. That the beauty of Dean working with this band singer was such a joy. Yeah, I wish there would have been video of that. The pictures are awesome, but
me too.
But we do have one of the good moments, one of the great moments. So it took them a lot of years. They probably, I believe that they did speak on the phone to each other throughout the late 70s. They were both going through drug addictions.
Yeah.
pill addictions, and you know, they had a lot of rough years.
Yeah.
But I would say that I think they had I know I do remember Dean around that time saying like we even when we run into each other we kiss. So there was Dean like admitting that hey, we do see each other.
Yeah.
But then he also came back with the thing, I don't like the things that he said about me. He came up with like some random thing like I love him and I'm kissing him when we meet, but he said some things. Well, no, Dean, you're the one mostly saying the things.
Oh.
This was a film that never happened, and it makes me weep. It makes me weep. It was to be directed by Peter Bogdanovich, and in 1982, it says the early 80s, but it was around 1982 that and The King of Comedy by Sean Levy, he mentions this also. But yeah, this is from Peter Bogdanovich's book, Who the Hell's in It? On his section talking about Frank Sinatra. And so they almost did this movie called Paradise Road, a comedy drama, and it was going to star Dean and Jerry reunited. And Jimmy Stewart. Like James Stewart was going to be in this.
Why?
The producers never, like, there wasn't money for it or something, but that, like, the producers were basically the people who screwed this up.
And like it says here that Dean was totally okay with, well, I mean, he totally okay. Who gives a fuck is actually what he says. But but I have an article somewhere, though, that it wasn't just this book or the other book, which I have books. I have these books, but I had an article that talked about that, like, Dean and Jerry actually talked about it. Like, it wasn't just like a passing comment. They actually were like in a room together talking about the possibility of this movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like a passing comment.
Yeah, and like Jerry, I remember, was pretty enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
And so it had a brilliant idea. They played two guys who were in the same group but spoke to each other only through intermediaries. Would have been absolutely hilarious.
I know.
And, you know, of course, there's Frank again trying to get them back together. He's the
he was us.
Intermediate. He's us. He's trying to get them. And then, of course, here it talks about, like, Ava Gardner was suggested by Peter Bogdanovich. And, you know, that would have, oh my goodness. Like, if the two greatest
love stories.
Angsty love stories of all time.
Oh my god, that would have been amazing. That movie, like, that probably would have made so much money. So what the hell was with the producers?
I don't know.
Do you know how much money the public reunion of Martin and Lewis would have made?
Yeah.
Even in the 80s.
Yeah. Ava and Frank and Dean and Jerry back together again. And you get the bonus of Jimmy Stewart doing something.
Jimmy Stewart, what the hell?
And he's like, like, everybody's a gambler, a degenerate gambler. Like, how awesome is that?
I know. That's how I feel.
This is the most tragic thing to never happen.
It's so upsetting. I'm just, that could have been like the best movie ever. Like I said before when we were talking privately, I said that even if it was like the worst script ever and it was technically an awful movie, it would have been the best movie ever. But I love bad movies. But even though I love bad movies, it would have been the best movie ever, just cast-wise. Like, that could have been them sitting in a room eating for an hour and a half talking about nonsense, and I'd be like, this is the best movie ever.
Yeah.
like that's how much I wanted this thing to happen, okay? Like,
Absolutely.
it could have been like an Avengers moment eating shawarma, just an hour and a half of them doing that.
I do remember there was like supposed to be a scene where they talked together at the very end. That's like the last thing, like they're sitting in a booth and then they finally speak to each other. I think that was supposed to be the end.
Yeah, I think so. That sounds very familiar. It could have been so good.
Very frustrating.
This is like a reunion that didn't happen. Because they did talk about it. They talked about it, but it was also, since the movie didn't happen, it's like the biggest reunion that never happened, and it hurts my insides very, very dramatically. It's like kind of traumatic. It's like, what the heck, man? What the heck? Why are people stupid? I'm so upset about this. I could rant about this for like a year straight.
Indeed.
It took them until 1987 when Dean's son passed away in an airplane crash. And Jerry appeared privately at the funeral. And he was in the background.
The very back,
and he, I don't think Dean saw him. Dean didn't see him at the funeral, but somebody told him. I forget who it was that told him.
Wasn't it Frank?
I think it was Frank. Yeah.
I think it was.
And he said that Jerry was here, and Dean was so moved that he called Jerry, and they kind of reconciled, and then they talked.
Yeah, they talked on the phone all the time after that.
And he was just so moved that Jerry would, come to Dino Jr. Funeral. That was after, or that was before that reunion for the Rat Pack that happened in 1988, where Jerry filled in for Dean and Sammy. I don't know if he was. I think they both took leaves at that point. I'll have to look to see who he actually replaced. But I think he replaced. Somebody told me that he replaced 2 people or something. But we have one of my favorite ones where.
We're talking about the birthday, right?
The birthday one, where Jerry surprises Dean on stage, and Dean is just so happy. He's like, it seemed like he was kind of crying.
Yeah, he was emotional.
He was very emotional. I wish the whole thing existed in one clip. I had to dig deep for this thing. Let's watch the one from Dean's biography, which, let's see, isn't the complete one. Let's see.
This goddamn wing here. Do you know
A few years later in 1989, Dean and Jerry appeared on stage for their last time together. The occasion was Dean's 72nd birthday.
I am here to present you with this happy birthday cake for 72 years of joy that you've given to the world. And why we broke up, I'll never know.
Me either.
I have no idea what happened.
It's because I was a Jew and you were a Dago.
No, you're the Dago. I'm the Jew.
In the few years following...
That was a wonderful moment, but they cut out the best part.
Yes.
Which is this.
I gotta kiss you on the lips.
Are you busy later?
Yes, I am.
Was noticeably moved, and so were fans everywhere.
I mean it. I love you. I love you, Dean.
So yeah, there you go. Dean said he loves
I
him.
love you.
And there was somebody arguing with me. There's lots of people that argue with me online, saying that
Me too.
Dean never loved Jerry. All sorts of they can't handle the truth.
No, they can't handle the truth. They really can't.
Like from the array of I don't know why I chose that word, array of emotions that happened from Dean's end, towards Jerry. Like, nobody forced Dean to kiss Jerry on the lips.
No.
Nobody,
Definitely not.
Nobody told Dean to lick his partner's face on 1950s television.
Absolutely
Nobody
not.
did that. No, and the amount of hugging and touching, and that was also later carried on. Like, he would incorporate that in his shows with Frank and Sammy.
Yep.
And they would have a lot of the same act. So it's like, I wonder who came up with this. Did Jerry come up with it and he carried it on, or did Dean come up with this?
Yeah.
I want to know.
Absolutely.
Dean said, "You surprised me." He held his arms out and his eyes were full of tears.
Oh, yeah.
Jerry said that he blinked hard, not wanting to start bawling in front of 1,500 people. As we hugged, he said loud enough for the audience to hear, "I love you and I mean it." And then I said, "Here's to 72 years of joy that you've given the world. Why we broke up, I'll never know." And then Dean said, "You're still the best in the whole world. I love you and I mean it." Yeah.
That's someone that hates them.
Favorite. That's just my favorite one. I get
Yeah, no, I love that one too. Yeah, for sure. It's very nice.
A very fitting end to the reunions, I would say. To end on that note, I believe that they spoke on the phone after that, so that wasn't the end.
No, they continued to speak until Dean passed away.
Yeah. So
Jerry went to his funeral.
Yeah. So they, if you watch the MDA special for Dean, Jerry is like, should I include that? Should I put us through the misery? And no, I'm not gonna do that to everybody. So Jerry at that point was still hosting the MDA telethon, and in 1996, he played the video to honor his partner, Dean Martin, and it was a very tragic thing to see, because he hit between that and Sammy Davis Jr. dying. Those were the two most important men. I think the same thing for Frank.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Frank too.
But I think he was most torn and emotional on Sammy and
Dean. Yeah.
Dean. I think he had more of a time for Frank to process his grief, because he had died a little bit. I know Sammy Davis Jr. died pretty close to.
Yeah, but Dean, he'd had almost close to a year, but it was Dean, so he wasn't going to be like, "Yay, he's dead."
Yeah.
He's gonna be the opposite of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he wouldn't have been like that in any way, shape, or form.
No.
The fact that he was
me being sarcastic.
The fact that he was still looking at Dean's photos years later and was like, he meant more to me than a wife, a child.
He named his dog after him.
Yeah. So that's all you need to know about the 20-year reunion myth, that they did not speak to each other for 20 years.
Fake.
Yes, fake.
Not true.
In every single way. Dean and Jerry perpetuated this myth. We have no idea why. But
they wanted to be mysterious.
Yeah, I guess so. But we're here to give you the facts.
Disprove
all that nonsense.
And make it real. I don't know the words. Sorry.
Well,
It's
we're glad you could join us on this 2-hour journey.
3 hour. I think it's 3 hours. I think we've hit the
2 to 3 hour journey of. I didn't expect it to take that long, actually.
No.
But there was a lot to sift through. So if you're still with us here at the end, we're glad that you joined us. Thank you, Kayla. We hope to do this again.
Yes.
And
Bye.
go
Are you not done?
online if you want to check out jerrylevitch.tumblr.com. So it's Jerry.
I'm Fuzzy Sebastian Stan.
So it's Jerry Levitch, his real last name,
Yes.
LEVITCH.tumblr.com. And of course, my Give the Chance a Kid and Don Azafai YouTube channels, where there's a ton of Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis content.
Good stuff. And like I said, I just I didn't know she was going to go off about all the earlier stuff. I'm Fuzzy Sebastian Stan on Tumblr, and I do post stuff about them, and I probably will be posting more now that I have a scanner.
Pretty awesome. All right.
That's what I am.
We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You worked and made me a star, dear. In spite of it all, I love you.